Selectmen and Finance Appropriation and Advisory Committee meeting. It is 6:30 p.m. and we are at 71 West Main Street in the Dudley Municipal Complex, room 321A. This meeting is being recorded. Without objection, the Chair of the Board of Selectmen will facilitate item 5 on the agenda with the understanding that the FAA Chair will chair the FAA Committee concurrently, including any allowable discussions, questions, business, or motions requested or required under item 5. We're going to start with the Pledge of Allegiance.
I do allegiance to the flag of the United States of America
and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. So we are going to take the agenda a little bit out of order tonight. First and foremost is 4A, public business, the Girl Scouts Democracy Badge. I want to acknowledge that the Girl Scouts are in attendance working toward their Democracy Badge, so welcome. I hope it's an informational meeting for you all. Thank you for coming. Next up, we're going to skip down to 5A. Representative John Marcy provides a public update to the Board of Selectmen and FAA relative to the status of local aid and education funding for fiscal year 27 and provides an overall picture of the annual state budget relative to municipal funding. Answers questions by town officials as facilitated by the chair. So, Representative Marcy, wherever you want to go.
Table, wow. Hi, guys.
Hi.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and through you to the members. Nice to be here with you. The House just finished their version of the budget, so I have a couple of things I want to share with you about that. So I'll back up a little bit on how the process works. So the governor submits her budget early in the year, and with revenue estimates, all that good stuff. I'm a member of the Ways and Means Committee, and we went all over the state, 12 or 13 hearings at different locations, and to hear what themes, as we sort of build what the House and Senate budgets look like. And the number one thing I heard, we all heard, was that municipalities are hurting, right? And because of that, what's the answer? And the answer is always local aid in whatever form that should take. Which I'll go through those bullet points in a minute. And when you have town administrators, town managers, mayors, people, elected positions like yourselves that come in front of us and say, hey, we need help. Aid isn't keeping up with the rate of inflation. Our costs are through the roof. Themes that we hear here in Dudley. Health insurance is at the top of the list on those increases. So something has to give. So, also school funding, right? Chapter 70 is a perennial, hot button issue that we talked about, and which we will, I believe, fully take that up in the next term. I've asked the chairman of Ways and Means that, when are we going to do that? It's not just me. The good part is it's not just me asking for that. Everybody wants that. There's 211 towns that are in the same boat as Dudley. So that's a big portion of the 351. So now that the Student Opportunity Act is fully implemented at the end of this year, they want to tackle the funding formula. So that's coming. So everybody heard what towns like Dudley, I've mentioned it to my colleagues, and they have the same thing. Everybody's facing overrides. There's a whole handful of towns that have gone to that. Again, there was very few levers to pull at the local level. So when you're looking to build a budget, we've done it here for years. Jonathan looks at a couple of key numbers, to see what he's going to get for aid before, we start talking with the Finance Committee, FAA, and what we're going to fund. Remember, a budget is a written statement of our priorities. We always say that. So that is also true at the state level, right? So there's no tax increases to residents in this budget, right? There are increases, to things like UGA. We call it UGA, unrestricted local aid. So Dudley's getting $2.24 million. It is only a 0.76% increase over prior year.
Say it again. I'm sorry, Madam Chair.
Hold on. Let me pull a Sully. 0.76%, right? So that's basically nothing. When I met with the chair of Ways and Means, we all have our sit-downs to go over our priorities, local earmarks, and priorities. My number one thing was local aid. Our whole caucus and many others said something has to be done, and the answer is, I don't like UGA. They're just going to use it to pay their school bill. And I'm like, yeah, and health insurance and, other things that, there's not enough money coming in, because, overrides. Did anybody see what happened in South Hadley a couple of weeks ago? 2 overrides, 50%, enormous, and they both went down, right? That's a theme that we're seeing, right? So 0.76, it's shameful. Chapter 70 for Dudley Charlton, 25.85 million. That's an increase of 2.01%, right? It's 160 per pupil. That's the highest it's ever been, and this hasn't gone to the Senate yet. Some of these numbers could go higher, but this is right now basically what's come out of the House. Chapter 90, I think you guys might have seen this already. It's about 697,000, about the same as last year, but because of the way that is the one formula we've actually changed. I'm on the Transportation Committee, and as of last year, 50% is the base formula, and 50% is based on road miles. So towns like Dudley, and other, bigger towns that have more roads, do better. So we used to get in the neighborhood of about 425,000. Now we're getting, close to 7, right? So that's the good news there. We also got an earmark for the Dudley Fire Station for their security and access system, about 45,000. I know that's a need, so I was happy to get that. But let's go back to local aid. One of the number one thing we said and we heard was, we need to increase local aid. So one way to do it when you're not being heard during the budget discussions and all the hearings is to create budget amendments. So the House members, fellow House members and I, it was the most ever, like 1,750, right? So it takes a long time to go through them and figure out, 'cause sometimes there's duplicates or something similar, and we don't necessarily evaluate each on its merit. They get consolidated into buckets, and the House votes on it as buckets. Back in the day, they used to go one by one. We don't do that anymore. So what I wanted to share with you guys tonight, that just on get an idea of some of the amendments that we pushed, okay? One was to require the comptroller, prior to calculating the FY27 net surplus, to transfer up to $25 million in unexpended appropriations to UGA that would otherwise revert to the general fund. So we made sure we put people on the record, roll call these, and it failed. 28 yes, 130 no. Just think about these numbers as I go one by one, and now you'll know what these towns are up against. Here's another one. Required a transfer of not less than 25% of funds received in excess of the consensus revenue estimate to be transferred to UGA, but cap the amount at $25 million. Okay? That failed 27 to 131. And then we tried something else. It was like, how about a 10% increase in UGA line item? But that's about $133 million. That failed 23 to 133. And then one of the ones, we tried to divert money from other accounts. All right, so there's a line item that was supports unlimited no-cost calls to prison inmates. We tried to move 10 million from that line, 10 million, right, to UGA, and that failed 26 to 132. We also tried to reform the circuit breaker program. These are the things you guys are hearing, like when you guys meet with the schools, by requiring the state to reimburse school districts at 75% of all the instructional and transportation costs that exceed either the approved cost threshold or the statewide average per pupil expenditure, whatever is lower. Failed, 25 to 132. Require regional school transportation to be funded without it being subject to appropriation, right? Basically, and we've tried this, we've tried this every year. So that way, the schools know what they're going to get. And if the schools know, it's easier on the town. See how it's all connected. Failed, 25 to 132. And finally, special education, right? Reimburse cities, towns, and regional school districts for 80% of special education costs that exceed the district's average per pupil expenditure. Failed, 25 to 132. Okay, so the House tried. to push local aid failed. You know, the supermajority has an agenda. When you have a supermajority, you can do whatever and whenever you want, right? Yet nothing gets done. It's funny how this works. So we're still pushing our senators. So Senator Fatman, Senator Durant, everybody else, like that goes to them next. And I fully expect them to push amendments like this too. Senators tend to come in, the Senate tends to fund things we don't. Again, sometimes it feels like it's a predetermined outcome, but you know, so they become the heroes in this, and that's fine. Let them be the hero as long as our towns do well. That's the outcome. So we're advocating for this. Like I said, no tax increases for residents. You know, from the state level, there are increases in local aid, but not what they need to be. So this is a fundamental disagreement with the current leadership whose districts are fully funded and get everything they want. So that's what I wanted to tell you guys today. We're not, everybody in Dudley is in the same boat as many other towns. Is there any questions you guys have?
Any questions from the board? Or town officials?
Very rhetorical question, John.
Yeah, I was gonna say.
Stunning the tally of each vote on each amendment. I can imagine where the 25 and the 26 came from and the 130.
Oh, yes.
Which caucus voted? Which caucus voted which?
Correct. That's how it works. Yep. I've actually, I put out my statement on my site about that, and there's a graphic that shows it. It's a lot of red. And, you know, pick an issue. Rural aid, local aid, transportation. No, that's how they work, because they think it's good enough. It's not good enough. So now we go to the Senate, right? Like I said, we got to push the Senate to do this, and we've been pushing on UGA. It's getting them to that's what's going to help here. That line item.
Mr. Ruda?
I'd like to thank Representative Marcy about, you mentioned earmarks for the fire department. You were able to bring some money back for the door locking mechanism, and I know that's been important. The chief has been trying to get that. The chairs we're sitting in, the ceiling tiles above us that are getting ready to fall down. MJ ordered them. They'll be here shortly. That's earmark money. The facelift from the original paint, police department, some flooring, that's earmark money. But those are exactly the type of things that we cut in order to make the budget work. And the representative knows, having sat at this table, that not raising taxes on the state level, but not freeing up money for the appropriate purpose, means that you are raising taxes at the local level. Not you,
Right.
but you fully understand that rhetoric is
This
just
was the
that.
debate. That is exactly
It
the
all
debate.
tumbles downhill.
And they say it's not always about the cities and towns. Well,
Yeah, it really is.
It really is.
That's why we call it a commonwealth.
That's exactly.
Right.
Well, a lot of my colleagues, while they're great, nice people, may not have sat at this table and understand what we do there affects a town and affects the people. Right? It's all connected. But things like asking for something that, you know, we would cut, like the fire station stuff that I got, you know, other earmarks, and you always hear stories about some earmarks that people get that kind of irritate you. And one in particular that I think colleagues on both sides were really scratching their head about was $700,000 to the Jaylen Brown Foundation, the Celtics. I like him. I love the Celtics as much as the next guy, but the guy's worth $300 million. Why did we give taxpayer money for his foundation, no matter what good it does? He can go fundraise for that. That's taxpayer money. That should be coming here, right? That's the way this works. So you have to be judicious about what you ask for, right? Because again, it's taxpayer money. It's all relative, right?
Mr. Sarchewski?
Mr. Marcy, I'm just kind of curious, what's your recommended action for municipalities to help our voices be heard a little bit stronger at the state level?
What we've been doing is when I go, because I represent other towns now, right, in other school districts, and really telling them, because they're getting told by, they hear it, you know, at the budget hearings, during Ways and Means, during like local, like when we go meet with the schools. A lot of my colleagues say the right things. I'm being brutally honest here. It's words and action. If you say that you're for rural aid, if you say you're for local aid, then when you walk through that door at the State House, vote for it. It's as simple as that, and it doesn't happen that way. That's what needs to happen. So people need to tell their other reps that this is lunacy, right? I mean, you need to build coalitions, you need to build partnerships, with people to, get stuff done. Otherwise, we can't just say no or no to everything, on either side, depending on what it is. But that's the number one thing in my book. When you have such a supermajority that won't listen to their own constituents who supports them, that's the funny part, right? That it all comes back to following through on what you say you're for. Right? So I can sit here and I can sleep at night saying I fought to get local aid. Some of them can't.
Any other questions?
Thank
Right,
you.
Jay,
Thank you.
anything? Awesome. You guys need anything? We'll come back after to do the Senate, and we can do something like that, and then we can see what the final budget looks like. So from here, it goes to the Senate. Senate might even get released this week. So if you haven't sent something to Senator Fatman, or he knows. I mean, he and I are on the same page, but he can file amendments. Or Peter Durant, remember Peter, right? Like these are senators I have a very close relationship, and say, hey guys, can you sponsor these that failed in the House? Let's push it there. And then so after the Senate, they'll debate it in a couple of weeks, and they'll pass their budget. Then it goes to something called the conference committee. So then you try to line up two different budgets. So that can take a while, right? And they trade off things, and they'll eventually come to an agreement, and then they'll send it back to the House to sign, then the Senate, and then the governor will sign it. So that's when we know when everything will stick, final numbers. Okay? So that's what needs to happen next. Push your senators. Push other reps.
Oh,
I
Mr.
know
Clark.
I'm. Okay?
Question for you. You mentioned a supermajority
Yes.
in the House. Is there a similar
Yes.
in the
So let me
Senate?
give you a sense of scope. There's 160 representatives. The minority party has 25. There's 135 in the supermajority. In the Senate, there's 40. There's 5 in the minority. So it's an 85%. Okay? And we stand for common sense, right? Not to make this isn't like political. This is like I'll go back to what I said before. A budget is a written statement of our priorities. Where are our priorities at the state level? They're not ours. That's my job, is to change people's minds there. Right?
Always mind to get a change.
Yeah. FAA, any other questions? Mr. Chair?
Anybody?
No.
Okay, awesome.
Thank you so
Thank
much
you
for
for having
coming
me,
in.
guys. Whatever you need, let me know.
Thanks, John.
Thank you.
Of course.
Okay, with that, we are going to go back a little bit to number 2 on the agenda, approval of minutes. We're going to pass this over to our 5/18 meeting. Number 3, citizens' comments. Anyone in attendance who'd like to address the board about something that's not on the agenda and doesn't require a vote of the board? Seeing none. Oh, sorry. Yeah, absolutely.
So we're Girl Scout Troop 64941, and we're not going to all ask a question, but they worked on a couple of questions to ask in regards to local government. Grace is our oldest Girl Scout. She's a
Hi.
sophomore.
I was wondering, what's something you wish more young people knew about how our towns work? Like, what do you think is vital that we should, be more aware of?
How important getting involved is at the local level. I know that probably sounds like boilerplate information, but it's absolutely true. We can't get anything done if we don't have our boards and our committees staffed, and it gets staffed with residents. and people who just take an interest in something small. You don't have to donate a lot of time, you just have to donate a little bit of time, and try to find things that really resonate with you. I think the other thing is Massachusetts especially has a very different form of government than a lot of other states. Like if I talk to one of my friends from California and I mention town meeting to them, they have no idea what I'm talking about. They don't get together twice a year to approve a budget as a citizen. And I think just understanding that that's kind of how it works as you're living in Massachusetts and moving between communities, whether you stay here for your whole life, like a lot of us have, or you move to a different community in the same Commonwealth, like the rules are relatively the same. So kind of getting an understanding of that is important. Anybody else?
I think it's really important and powerful to identify what your civic identity is and really pursue your own beliefs and how they tie to the greater community. With the introduction of the civics requirement in public schools in Mass, which was by far one of the best things that's happened from Department of Elementary and Secondary Ed, we've seen a lot of action projects that have been created by 8th grade kids around the state, and their involvement is quite powerful. They are the future, and you all, by just being here tonight and learning a little bit about this process, is giving you a great stepping stone to do what Mr. Shane suggested. Get involved, provide service to the local community or greater communities in the Commonwealth. So the more you can develop that civic identity, the more powerful your voice is going to be when you hit voting age. And even before voting age, there are lots of ways to give back.
Thank you.
Carrie?
Can I throw an answer in there too?
Yeah.
Vote. Your vote matters. At town meeting, there's usually less than 100 people show up. That's where the budget's decided. You can make an amendment on the floor to change something. You have the power to affect your government, and if you don't vote, you're giving that power to someone else. And even in elections, our state rep, Peter Durant, that was before Mr. Marcy, he won an election by 1 vote. Your vote matters. Vote. That would be my thing. Pay attention and vote. It matters. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Grace.
So now I have 8th grader Brooklyn.
Hi, my question is, how do you decide how to spend the town's funds?
You came to the right meeting to ask that question. It's a big part of what we're talking about today. Does anyone else want to take that question?
So I'll try, but Mr. Root is probably better at it than I'll be. We have a certain amount of money. You heard the state rep talk tonight. We have a financial team, and these folks here are the Finance and Advisory Appropriation Committee. They're volunteers. Wasn't that long ago. Mr. Boussier was probably in your age bracket. He's up now. But we only have so much. And the financial team are the professionals, the administrator, the assistant, the treasurer, the accountant, they're all here. Your fire chief, police chief, highway, water, sewer, you get the idea. And they have their requests. And they may, to make it simple, they may want $100 each, but we don't have 100. We might only have 85. So some people have to do it a little bit less than what they want. And again, as everyone said, as Mr. Massey said, the only way to raise revenue is either cut a service, or cut a program, or go to the state and ask for more money. So it's just then they formulate a budget, it goes to town meeting, as Mr. Sigan Everett said, as everybody else did. If we're lucky, we have 100 people. We probably have, I wish Lori was here, 6,800 registered voters, something like that, 7,000?
Yeah, it's closer to
At
7.
least 7,000 registered voters. And we're lucky if we get 100. And if 51 people show up, like-minded, 51 to 49 majority rules.
Thank you.
Good question.
Next is Colby, who's currently 8th grader at Dudley Middle.
Hi, what advice would you give to young adults who would want to become leaders one day?
Olivia question, no?
That's a great Olivia question, actually.
Okay. Hello.
Hello.
advice that I would give to people looking to be leaders someday is you just have to keep going. Sometimes it can be really difficult. Sometimes there are things that try to drag you down, and as long as you remember why you got into it in the first place and why you're doing this, and you think about how you are helping lead for the greater good and helping make the public a better place, sometimes it's challenging, but just keep going is what I would say.
Thank you.
To tack on to what Olivia said, if you can learn how to listen and listen actively and really hear where people are coming from, we spend a lot of time talking up here, and that's not how you become a better leader. You become a better leader by listening to what the people around you are looking for and seeing like where you can help. That's always kind of like the guiding light, at least for us anyway. If we get stuck and we're going through a moment where we're not really sure why we're doing what we're doing, when you listen to the people around you, that's usually when you get brought back home.
You know what I like to add too, find a passion. There's a lot of committees in town, not just selectmen elected, not just FAA with finances, we have conservation. Those folks deal with people that want to build their wetlands and ponds, and they try to maintain the rural character with a good balance. But find your passion. If you like to work with seniors, we have the senior center. They would gladly take volunteers to come in and help serve a meal, or just sit and play cards, or just they have all kinds of workshops. Just come and sit with them. If that's your passion, find something you like, because then it doesn't seem like a burden.
Thank you.
Just to expand on that a little bit, sorry, we're not letting you get to your seat.
She's like,
Please let me sit.
I know, sorry.
It's okay, Mr. Starr, it's okay.
You know I like to talk. But I do think one of the most powerful distinctions here is leadership's not a title, it's the result of action, and it's the result of modeling and influencing others. So you don't need a formal title in order to effect positive change. And really that's what we're talking about. Any new ideas, any alternative strategies that you might have to how things have been done in the past, it's worth taking a risk and getting your voice out there, whether you're sitting, like us who are, fortunately or unfortunately, in these chairs, or just participating by asking these questions as you're all so eloquently doing. You are leaders by modeling that behavior for others. So just pursue your passion and remember your voice is powerful.
Thank you.
I think we're done with you.
She's safe now.
Grace just has, this is the last question.
Sorry.
It's a good one, though.
No,
worry.
don't apologize.
Oh, this is fantastic.
What are you most proud of accomplishing as a board?
I think that's an individual question, wouldn't it be?
Yeah, I think so.
Because I think we all have different passions. We all come together for common things, but we all have our own little things that are important to us that are, yeah.
Well, I've been here the longest. What I find, what I really like is when someone can come to me and say, I don't know what to do, or I'm not getting help, I'm not getting an answer. Can you help me? Or can you find out? And sometimes they don't like the answer. You can't always give them what they want to hear. But I find, as a selectman, when you help someone, they come to you and they say, oh, thank God, I go, thank goodness I couldn't figure this out. Just knowing that someone was satisfied that day, I find that very uplifting.
Mr. Johnson?
I think when we find ways to remove more obstacles than we create, this world has generated a million ways to say no, and finding a path forward to help people and make good happen in spite of all those issues that are probably intended, great intentions to help or stop harm from happening. But when you find those little glimmers of helping folks, as Mr. Sullivan said, that's when it means something.
Thank you.
Mr. Siganovich?
I guess we are all the same. I take back what I said earlier. I like when someone feels they don't have a voice and they have a legitimate issue, to be able to be like a loudspeaker for that voice and help them get what get what they need and keep everything an even playing field for all the citizens, regardless of who you are. Everyone's the same. I enjoy that.
Thank you.
Thank you, and thank you for the thoughtful questions.
Really good.
All right, so next up, we have 4B, presentation of donation of American flag to Senior Center from the Republican Town Committee.
Mike, come on.
Sure.
Thank you for having us. My name is John Breyer. I'm the chair of the Dudley Republican Town Committee, and a handful of our members here. I think you know everybody. The committee today has about 25 members, and you know, I've always loved coming and addressing the board because over your right shoulder is our founder, Abraham Lincoln. He was the founder of the Republican Party, and even though through the years, you know, you have different factions, fight for control. The beautiful thing about Dudley is we've always tried to keep true to Abraham Lincoln and what he stood for, right? And those principles and ideals. And so with our members, we try to foster some mentorship, so people that do want to get involved and exploring different opportunities in town government. Many of our members have served on boards or have been selectmen or planning board or whatever it might be, and it's nice to have some mentors. And so we had our meeting about 2 months ago, our first meeting at the Senior Center, which Olivia was kind enough to arrange for us. And we went to say the Pledge of Allegiance, and we noticed they didn't have a flag. And so he said, you know what? We have the 250th anniversary of the founding of our country. And Jim Brinker and Richard Clark were all over this and said, let's get them a flag, you know, as a thank you for everything they've done, right? Our motto is all were others, all will be others. And as those others may be going into the sunset and you have a sunrise here with a new generation of one day others, we decided to rally together. And Jim, we went to the store in Shrewsbury and we got the pole, and then it was too big, and then so Jim had to use his saw and cut it down. So on behalf of the Dudley Republican Town Committee, and as a thank you to the Senior Center and all of the seniors and what they've done for this town, behold, the donation.
Thank you so much.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
No, we appreciate it. Next up, Dudley Grange number 163 parking waiver. Request a parking waiver for Center Road between Dudley Hill Road and Tanyard Road on Thursday, June 18th, 2026 from 4 p.m. to 8 p.m. for the annual Strawberry Festival. Do we have anybody here for the Grange? Nope, that's okay. Not a big deal. Is public safety, Chief?
Just real quick, I did receive a letter from the Grange, basically advising the same. I haven't got a chance to speak with them, but I would have no issues with it. In fact, this year I'm going to try to have a little more police presence there to show off K9 Maverick, our drone unit, and some of our specialty units. So I would be in full support.
Okay. Local celebrity, K9 Maverick, in attendance. Love that. Do we have a motion?
Madam Chair, I'd like to make a motion that we grant Dudley Grange number 163 a parking waiver for Center Road between Dudley Hill Road and Tanyard Road on Thursday, January 18th, 2026 from 4 p.m. to 8 p.m. for the annual Strawberry Festival.
Second.
Okay, any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Unanimous. Okay. All right, so we're going to skip down to 5B. Town administrator and town accountant present override options as requested by the Board of Selectmen and FAA at last meeting. And I would just ask Sarah Monjo, our town accountant, to come on up.
Madam Chair, before we start, I'll just note that the Capital Improvement Committee voted tonight for the Water Department request, and I'd like to just add this to the agenda before the town meeting.
Okay.
For the Board of Selectmen to accept it onto our 5-year plan.
Okay.
Yes. What did I say? What did you say?
But it was a balanced budget, right?
Did I? All right. Yes.
Okay.
Madam Chair, I sent out on Friday at the board and the FAA's request some override ballot language options for us. Hoping everybody has had a chance to read it and kind of get an idea as to what they're thinking. This has not been an easy process. One of the things that we've eliminated was planning for FY '28 for the firefighters that came off the grant. It doesn't mean we're not going to plan for FY '28, we're just not going to do it through this override. So we eliminated that funding option. And so we came up with three, when I say we, the finance team worked on this. We had a pretty lively discussion in finance team about these options. We came up with three basic options. The third one is the menu option. Each one of them has their own value and pitfall. For example, the menu option does not fully fund what we need for FY '27. So of those two options in the menu, if one fails, we still use a substantial amount of stabilization. Option 2 is a tighter version of option 1. It's less the script in the ballot question, because one of the discussions we had was it got to be a little bit confusing when you list out every single penny as opposed to the source of where that overall amount is going. That's a tighter version of it. That returns the money from stabilization back into the stabilization account, gives us a little breathing room for FY '28. And option 1 is the all-in option, correct?
That would include all of the requests for the departments and allow us to sustain, although low, but some stabilization funds that are reserved for emergency purposes. So I don't know how much detail you want me to go into.
Madam Chair, just
Yes, Mr. Sarczewski.
a question.
Yes.
With no override, what will our stabilization fund be at, given that we've
We
looked
will
to
have
allocate?
absolutely no free cash and no stabilization funds. Nothing set aside for emergency funds.
That's kind of dangerous, yes?
Yes, very dangerous. It's suggested from the Department of Local Services that reserves be set around 8% of an annual budget to accommodate. And over the years, we've been able to raise minimal stabilization. And each year, as we go forward, we deplete stabilization. So it's this seesawing back and forth, and we have yet to achieve a sufficient level of reserve funds. So.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, we approached this like we discussed last time, but for those who haven't heard it before, we approached it at the board's direction. There's no personnel cuts to public safety. We're running it bare bones as it is now. As I mentioned, we had 4 firefighters come off the grant, which are funded for half a year. We had to cut our way to the other half of the year. And our expenditure, non-discretionary expenditures from FY '25 to FY '27. For example, education went up $830,000, 6.2% increase. Our health insurance costs went up 44%. Retirement went up 27%. And contractual obligations to public safety, that's a fire, police, paramedics, $409,000. As I mentioned before, our salary range is the base ranges are in the mid to low range for other regional departments and towns. We need to remain competitive. This is not an issue of having exorbitant salaries for any of our public safety people. It's just to keep our public safety people so that it doesn't turn out to be that the town is an internship for police officers, paramedics, firefighters who move on to a better paying position 15 minutes away, perhaps. So we've always tried to maintain, not only to be able to recruit, but to maintain staff that wants to be here and can afford to stay here. But when you get down to the point where we're cutting now, you know, on the way here, I was listening to the news on the radio, you hear about the oil increases, the energy increases, all these things that are way beyond our control. And as Sarah just mentioned, zero stabilization left, zero free cash, and we're already cutting to balance our budget for FY27. It's a dangerous position for us to be in without an override.
I mean, I worry about what we're going to do if we have a similar winter next year and we've already spent every extra penny we have.
And I thought the same thing on the way here. And I was thinking about when somebody brings it up, how am I going to respond to
I'm
that?
like, the weather's beautiful. I don't want to think about snow, but like we just had kind of a crazy winter, and to not have those emergency funds, or I don't know, it's.
Well, I've mentioned it before, Madam Chair. We've effectively had 4 highway guys, full-time guys working over this past winter. We more than doubled our ice and snow budget deficit. Now we'll be in a very similar situation, but we'll have no reserves for costs of fuel. We could have plenty of staff, but maybe have to park a plow truck because we can't afford to fix it. That's where we're cutting now.
Any questions? Mr. Johnson.
Through the chair, can you go over one more time the difference between option 1 and 2?
Sure. Option 1's override funds a significant increase in required and unavoidable costs to the town. And these are just costs to maintain current services. They include our school assessment, our health insurance, our retirement, and other contractual obligations. So for option 1, we've taken the departmental requests and we funded it with an override. It returns all of our stabilization that we used to balance in May back into those stabilization accounts to give us some room to breathe going forward. Fire engine breaks down, plow truck breaks, fuel goes through the roof. What's the chance of that happening? We'd have a reserve fund available, and it funds the FAA reserve fund as well. And it's important to realize that this is a 1-year override request, just like we did in 24. We used free cash and stabilization in 25 because I'm sure Mike remembers that we passed our override in August. We adjusted and fixed our budget using the override amount in October. We're literally planning for FY25 in January. So the thought of asking people to go back in January and put another override question on the budget because we're already looking at the next fiscal year, it's not going to happen. So that's why it's important to have some stable. It's not the best practice, but it's realistic. So we have a little bit of breathing room for the next fiscal year, and maybe we put off the override if we have stabilization, the next request until FY29, depending on how things go.
And the difference between option 2?
Option 2.
From option 1. What's not an option?
The option 2 has some. The option 2 I approach as if I were making cuts to budget requests. So it came down a little bit as if I was taking my first pass at the budget request and saying, okay, we can probably reduce, for example, the amount we have in grant and project design a little bit. We can reduce a larger increase to a discretionary account in a department request. And they were minimum and moderate to begin with, but those consider my initial reductions and what I would recommend in my TA recommendation, all things being equal. Plus, it's a tighter version of option one. It's not quite as confusing. It just kind of lists out public safety, highway education, municipal and regulatory compliance, out-of-district tuition and transportation, energy costs, things that people can understand. And then option 3 is, of course, the all-in version of option 2. But as I mentioned, it gives people the option to vote question 1, which is $1 million, question 2, which is $848,120. Question 1 covers health insurance, retirement, and schools. Question 2 covers public safety and municipal operations. My guess is if we went with this, and people would choose the lower of the two, if one were to go ahead and pass, and that would take all of our stabilization accounts to balance, to bring us into balance.
If that were to happen, we're still not going to have anything left over in stabilization.
We might get a little bit of free cash,
Okay.
but don't forget, we still have to pay for 2 articles for the assessor's office and a few other things with free cash before we can apply it back into stabilization. It certainly won't come close to what we have if the override passed.
Okay. Mr. Sarkowski.
And the menu option, can you just describe to the public how we would proceed if question X passes but question Y fails?
Well, so if question 1 were to pass, we would have to take $1 million of additional tax revenue, and we would have to apply it to the items listed in the ballot question. You could do that in a bunch of different ways. You would back out, for example, if retiree health insurance costs were $1.5 million, which I think it is. Is health insurance like 1.5 or 1.3? Let's say it's 1.5 and $1 million passed for health insurance. You could apply $500 to health insurance, back out that amount of money, and apply it elsewhere in the budget. And then go right down the list and make sure that everything that you've listed in the ballot question, that amount, a certain amount of money is applied to. It doesn't specifically say how much in each one, but they have to go for those additional costs.
Gotcha.
If you list the reason for an override, you have to apply the money accordingly. You know, and you go back and forth politically, how does the question work the best, right? So you say, you have to write it so it's not slanted as well. You can't say that you want to have an override, because if we don't have an override and the heat doesn't get fixed in the building, everybody's going to freeze to death. You can't put that in your ballot question. You need operational money to address HVAC costs, for example. But it's all about semantics. Do you say it's for police officers because people love police officers generally and it passes, but you're really paying for the increase in health insurance with it? You have to do it in a manner that's truthful and accurate.
Right.
But will people vote, would they vote for the real reason for the cost increase, which is health insurance increases and retiree costs and everything else that goes along with it? Or will they vote for the symptom, which is to reduce police budget, reduce fire budget, reduce other budgetary items because it sounds better, and you would just back the money into the real cause of the problem? So there's a bunch of different ways to split hairs over it, but the real costs are listed out. The real increases that killed us are listed out in one of these slides. Which one is it? Yeah, analysis,
The chart,
right?
but I now can't find.
We had an increase in revenues in 2 years of 1.4. And without paying for anything else, we had $2 million of increased costs for costs that we have to pay. That's before we paid for anything else. So the real root cause of a lot of this is education, health insurance, retirement, contractual obligations. And now we're looking at energy costs that we can't control and so forth.
Mr. Johnson.
Let's go through some scenarios of what option 2 versus option 3. So, option 2 passes, we cover those increased needs, keep services relatively even, minus some of the cuts from last year. Is that fair?
Mm-hmm.
Option 3, if neither pass, we're in the same predicament if option 2 fails. But if option 1 passes, question 1 passes and question 2 fails, we can probably cover the health insurance and school increases, but we'll be making reductions in the budget, probably in municipal and public sector.
The 1.8 is a real number.
Yeah, yeah.
That's what we need to get to. So if 848 passes, we're gonna be $1 million short. So we'd have to leave all of our stabilization in there. If people would choose question 2, 848, we'd have to use all of our stabilization and we'd still be $200,000 or $300,000 short because we need $1 million. We've got about 800,000 applied from stable.
So we'd have 0 stable and make $250,000 in cuts.
Correct.
Question 2 passes, but question 1, now we're short $1 million. We're still making cuts in the rest of the budget to pay
Correct.
for the health insurance and school increases.
And question 1, if that would have passed for $1 million, the same principle, we'd still have to apply 800,000 and we'd be up with fewer cuts.
So through the chair, the real question is, do we risk 1.8 million, or do we risk 1 million and $846,000, or 1.8 million?
And Madam Chair, this is the exact conversation we had at Finance team. One side, and we went back and forth a little bit, let's throw a number at it so that it'll pass, but it doesn't solve the problem, but it passed, but still doesn't solve the problem. The thing that solves the problem for 1 year and potentially 2 is $1.8 million, 1.8 and change. Return of stabilization to stabilization, and that potentially gets us through FY '29. Potentially, depending on the state of the economy. There's absolutely no chance that we get through '29. We're right back here if stabilization is used.
Any questions from FAA?
Have a few. So on option 2, I'm not even looking at option 3. I'm just looking at 1 and 2. Okay, option 2, you call out energy, debt, which I think debt should be a debt exclusion, not part of the tax, unless you can explain what that means, and senior services, but you don't mention that for option 1, which is asking for, a little bit higher amount.
Because option 1, I think, through the chair, is more of a root cause of the problem question, the way I wrote it. The root cause of the problem is contractual obligations, education, out-of-district school assessments, retiree employee health insurance costs. That's the root cause of the problem in option 1. Option 2 is more of a, here's how we'll apply the money if it passes.
Okay.
But
And why is debt listed on option 2? You mean like capital debt that should be on a debt exclusion? That shouldn't be coming out of annual taxes. That should have been coming out of the debt exclusion budget.
Well, debt is not, unless it's excluded, it's debt. If you don't exclude it, if we don't vote to debt exclude it, we pay it as operational costs. And I think in some cases, that's the issue. Rich has been back, but if we don't specifically vote for that debt exclusion, we pay those payments right out of operational expenses.
Mr. Ruda, is that the debt that went up for a debt exclusion and it didn't pass? Is that debt? Wasn't there a water line or something that we?
Yeah, there was, I believe there was 349,000 that didn't make it to.
Is that the debt?
It's part of it.
The debt that's included is the existing debt. The debt paid
Right.
required.
Correct.
To meet the needs, not the excluded debt, right?
Yeah.
So like, for example, Madam Chair, correct me if I'm wrong, if we buy a piece of equipment, and at the time the decision's made to pay for it out of operating costs, not debt exclusion, that's part of the debt. Big word debt covering a lot of things. Like you said, debt exclusion debt is different than
Right.
a
You
general
you
debt.
can have authorization to borrow money, but you need to have ballot approval to debt exclude it. In other words, you raise taxes to pay that. You pay that note off by increasing taxes. You can borrow all day long and pay for it through operations, but unless you specifically debt exclude it, there's no tax increase to cover it.
You know, that plays into the question, Madam Chair, that the young lady asked, how do you guys figure out how you're gonna spend your money? Well, again, we'll go back to that piece of equipment. If we wanna buy a truck for 50,000, and we say, well, we're gonna take it out of operating cost, that's 50,000 that's no longer there for energy increase, insurance increase, personnel increase. Whereas you were saying, you debt excluded, it's 50,000 for pick a term, 3 years, separate, 3 years, it's gone. So that pot goes away. That's 50 that you pay up front, you never get that back.
And one more question. So, at a high level, option 1 does not cut the budgets from the departments that were requested, and we restore the stabilization fund. We don't deplete that to 0. And option 2, we still restore the stabilization, but there's some budget cuts.
Correct.
Accounting for the difference in cost. Okay. I think that, well, it doesn't matter what I think.
Well, yes, it does.
I think the budgets that were requested over the past few months were as lean as they should be. So I'm not sure, other than the firefighters, which are on a grant for another 6 months or so, I don't know where these other cuts could come from.
Option 1 through the chair would cover the firefighters on the grant for 28 into 28.
Oh, it does?
And it would cover them in the entire cost.
Right.
Which, Madam Chair?
Yes.
It's
Says
kind
it
of
eliminates it.
a pledge. We as a group, those of us that were here, that have been here through the years, when we do that grant, we understand it's 100%. Dean, Chief can help me out a little better, but it's 175, 50, or one, actually, it's fully funded, and then the burden shifts to the town. That's a pledge we took as board members to keep that department staffed.
The last grant I received was for 4 people, and it was covered 100% salaries and benefits for 3 complete years, 100%, all 3 years.
And then percentage shifts to the town, right?
Yeah.
Well, it shifted mid-year, so that's why it's cut in half.
No, I know, I sat in that meeting with you and Sarah that day. But I'm just saying, that's a pledge we took as a board to authorize you to back your request to go get that grant. And you give us numbers every month. It doesn't say it pays for itself is not the point. You don't want the ambulance at your house. You don't want the fire department, but it pays for itself.
Yeah, and through the chair, I don't want you to.
Thank you, Chief.
We're not considering any, we're gonna keep the firefighters in 28. We're not considering that. We're just saying that we plan for them in 27 as part of this override, or.
But if we plan for them as part of this override, it's more proactive and we don't necessarily, like, we won't have to go back to the town for another override in a few, well, it's hard to say one way or the other for sure, but it's less likely that we would have to potentially do an override 2 years in a row because we've already planned for personnel for that additional 6 months.
Correct.
Through the chair, the things we know about.
The things we know about.
The things we know about.
Yes.
And, you know, Madam Chair, too, I had the opportunity to sit with the accountant and the administrator one day, and I know it's a number on a chart, but as Robin Watson just said, we're looking at pretty lean budgets. And yes, we can sit here and say we're gonna fund it, we're only funding the first half because of the way the grant lined up. But it's pretty sobering when you're looking up and you're saying to yourself, to balance this, I have to look at that type of a line item. That's how lean we are, to use your word, how lean we are going into the bottom line. It's awful.
I would concur that our expenditures for for discretionary spending are at 24 levels. There have been no increases, and we pushed down a pretty lean, I say we, I wasn't here at the time, but the decision of the town back when the 24 override was passed was to provide 1 year's worth of a very lean budget at that time. And during this exercise and looking at the history of the town and the expenditures, there's nothing left to cut. I mentioned before, John at one point said, Sarah, go back and put all of the discretionary spending back to what it was at 24. And I started the exercise and I went back to John and I said, John, I'm raising the amount. We keep cutting. And at some point, you just can't run that way. So.
You know, to piggyback on Sarah, I mean, the treasurer's back there, he was here, Rich, how many years ago was it? The town hall went to 4 days a week. We literally cut 20% operating time.
05, 06 perhaps.
Yeah. I mean, we literally closed out, we were a full-service town, and we told our, well, the taxpayers had a chance to vote, but the result was we went to an 80% customer service level. And I fear we're getting close to something similar.
Right. I mean, we're low staff now, and we have, the staff we have are very dedicated to, they go above and beyond. There's no fat in town hall. There's no fat in any department. And to retain the level of services that you currently have, it's time to make a decision, I think, so.
Mr. Johnson?
Through the chair, to echo what you're saying, and it's not just the services you want to have in town. Remember, there's a whole bunch of stuff that has to happen. There's state and federal mandates to do things a certain way, and it takes people to do it. It's, you know, as much as we can, you know, implement some great tools like, you know, Vadar or something else to help, you know, lean out some of the work. A lot of the stuff is, you know, if the state implements a system and it's very manual, somebody's got to do it. That's hours, that's people, that's training to do it. That's, you have to invest that money just to meet basic requirements. Never mind all the stuff we want to do to have a safe community, which is very important to the community and us.
So, I mean, we're all making great points here. Now, 2 weeks from today, we got to make those same great points. And I guess the question is, how can we best present this? You know, like, can we get a one-page sheet that we can hand out on voting day? Can we get a presentation like we did with the water? You know, like in May, I think it worked well. That somebody went up and gave a full presentation on this is what we need to do. This is, you know, the steps. This is why we need the money. I think everybody needs to know the things that went up were beyond our control, beyond our estimation, beyond our guesses, beyond our wild imagination that it could have gone up that much. The taxpayers need to know that we weren't asleep at the wheel. I mean, we made educated guesses based on what these line items were going to be, and they just blew up. You know, because they want to blame us. You know, they want to blame anybody but, you know, the world. But, you know, we can't just say 210 other towns are also going for overrides. You know, we can't just say we're just one of a bunch. No, we have to, I think we really need to make our point and be very organized about it and be very open and expressive before we just get barraged. You know, before we get a line of people just chopping us down, let's just present, you know, here we are. You know, these are all things that we couldn't have predicted, you know, and we need your help.
So with that in mind, if we don't have, Mr. Mayotte, do you?
Oh, go ahead if you want to.
No, I was just going to say if we want to move to the next part of all of this, the discussion, which we've kind of been doing anyway.
Yeah, I guess that's what my kind of question was.
Yeah.
And I guess to John also. Are you looking, is the Board of Selectmen looking for a override recommendation from the FAA? Or are you looking for our opinions on it first and then a vote? What procedure are you looking for?
Well, through the chair, I think it's very important that the FAA, and this may have been a missed opportunity on my part back in '23, but I'm getting the impression I understand how the FAA feels, and I think we're in general agreement. It's important to put that on the record because the FAA, I know you know this, but I'm saying it publicly, the FAA is the advisory board to the town meeting voters. Not that we're going to make a big decision at town meeting, but we're going to be going to the ballot in June. I think it's important that the FAA is on the record with their thoughts and what their recommendations are.
So at our last meeting, the FAA made a recommendation on your balanced budget. Had a caveat in there. Haven't been updated on that yet.
The caveat?
Well, I wanted information from the school board as to the amount of that cut, how it affects the assessment.
Oh, through the chair?
Yes.
Okay. We talked in length about.
Yeah, I mean.
Yeah, and how that was not a line item.
Right.
Cuts that you had discussed with Steve at the school committee meeting. That does not impact the assessment at all.
That's where I have the slight difference, because in essence, they were correct.
What? They were correct?
They were in wording. The federal aid is not shown in the assessment. So if you look at the money coming in, the federal aid's not shown in there. It's a separate thing. But if you make a huge cut to the federal aid, it has to affect the assessment, because unless you're laying people off and it's part of the layoff. So if they're projecting $500,000 less in revenue on the federal aid side, it has to, unless they've given us cuts and said, you know, these people are laid off, this Title I, Title II, you know, all these special ed, we have layoffs here for that $500,000. It's blending into the assessment. So that assessment is still capturing that loss. And I just never got an answer as to how much.
Did you reach back out to Mr. LaMarche?
I didn't talk to Mr. LaMarche. Last 2 weeks have been pretty difficult for me, but I haven't. So I was just wondering if, I didn't know if anybody from the school board was here that could let us know where they got that.
Well, I spoke with Joe, who's the finance manager for the school system.
Like I said, after
expressed your concerns, and he told me that there was no impact. So, and then you spoke with me and said you were going to reach out. Right. So, so this is news to me.
Through the chair, so it sounds like you still have your open action item to talk to Mr. LaMarche.
Say that again?
You still have your open action item to talk to Mr. LaMarche.
Well, yeah, we can always, bring up
So there's no question for the board, is what I'm guessing.
No, I'm just trying to bring that up. So we do have a recommendation. That was kind of the caveat. Let's get an answer back from the school board as to why they assume a 25% cut in federal aid and how it affects the assessment. Really don't know at this point. All I know is that language-wise, yes, the federal aid doesn't show in the assessment. I understand how that works. But that much of a cut that they're projecting has to impact teachers.
Through the chair, the assessment is the assessment, though. They won't change it after the fact.
No.
So if the assessment, if we only have to work with the assessment, if they get an additional cut, they deal with it, right?
Entirely up to the Board of Selectmen how they want to go with that.
No, I don't, no, it has nothing to do with the Board of Selectmen. We get an assessment from the,
But if the assessment's not correct,
from the school.
then
Well,
I have an issue.
If the amount went down, because we dealt with this recently, right? We got billed the wrong amount.
Yeah, they correct.
So what we plan in the budget sometimes changes when the fiscal year begins, when the numbers are finalized. So if we pass a budget with a certain amount on it, we got the bill from the original amount, but it actually gone down, correct?
It
From
was
last year.
I picked up an issue when the final assessment came in. They do, I don't know, if it's 8 payments throughout the year, the school committee. And when the final one came in, usually our budget to actual zeroes out. It's spot on. And it was off. So there was a late change in the billings, and they corrected it right to what the assessment was, the final assessment.
So through the chair again, the assessment is the agreement with the school.
The assessment is an agreement. However, there's been adjustments to the bill, so it's not impossible. In other words, if they voted an assessment and the numbers came in better than what they thought they would be, there's no reason why they couldn't vote again and make that adjustment. It's not impossible, it's not illegal. It's just,
So to the chairman's point, could they go back and increase the assessment to us?
they have. We've done, that's why we did the override in 23. The town meeting approved one number and another number was voted. After
So my point, you weren't here at the last meeting, Jake. So my point being is that when they create the assessment, they have what they think is coming in for revenue. Obviously, like we do, right? And their expenses. If you're counting on $1.6 million in federal aid, which is in that which there are teachers, there are things lined up in that assessment. If you're counting on $1.6 million in aid, if you undercut that by $500,000, if you say we're only going to get $1.1 million coming in aid, that has to translate to layoffs on the assessment side. You can't just not have $500,000 coming in.
But through the chairs, we'd face the same thing.
Right. So
if
the
state aid changes or this assessment changes
Right.
or anything else, we're in
But
trouble.
in order to make up that amount of money, we have to pass that now along to the taxpayer. That loss of money on our side. So you get, Charlton gets half, or more half than we get half. So let's just say it's 400,000, where that they're undercutting their budget for revenue, then we, as taxpayers, have to come up with that in this override to make up for that.
Come up with the assessment, but not increase our budget.
Right, and if that federal aid comes in at the 100% that we believe it will, then that $200,000 or whatever number it is doesn't come back to us. You see what I'm saying? It doesn't come back because we've already passed the budget. So my argument is why not, without information that says that's going to be cut by 25%, why aren't they budgeting for it at 100%? They should be budgeting at 100%. And if they are short, we come back in the fall and we fix it in the fall like we do our budget. But that's not what's going to happen. So if they do get the full 100%, That's $200,000 now in a permanent override that we've sent out, an extra $200,000. That's kind of my argument of that. That's what I wanted to know, is what that number was, and I still haven't really understood what that
Through the chairs, wouldn't we just adjust our budget and default adjust as well?
Well, for our expenses, but for the town, I mean, if the school came back and said, the federal government shorted us, X amount of money, and we need that money, they come back just like any department does and says, hey, we're short. Can, free cash or what, other ways of how we fund that. But if we give it to them up front, we can't claw that back. So that ends up going somewhere else. That's all I'm saying. That was the one thing that bothered me. And that one came from the presentation when you guys were at the Heritage School, came from the presentation. It was right in their presentation that they were shorting federal aid by 25% across the board. That's a lot of money. And I never got an explanation as to why, where they got that from. So that was one of my concerns on that.
Through the chair, I believe a portion of that presentation focused on their increase in use of excess and deficiency to help offset some of those potential reductions. So while I do agree, we're talking about a reduction budget across our departments that are already very lean in their presented budgets. The school department hasn't provided a reduction scenario for us if additional federal funding doesn't come through, but I do believe that their E&D funds were appropriated to address
that loss. That's what I'm concerned about, is that they're appropriating their other income to offset.
They're covering the anticipated portion of that reduction in federal aid through application of E&D. So I think they're taking...
Absolutely, yeah, right.
So I don't think the burden necessarily is being shifted. I think the liability around additional reductions is a problem.
But if they lose that, let's say they lose that 500,000, or let's say I'm not going to say they're going to lose that. They lose that 500,000, they're using their E&D and their other stuff to compensate for that. But that's because they're shorting the 500,000.
Correct.
If the 500,000 is not shorted, which I can't see any evidence that that's going to happen, that money's not coming back to us or Charlton. It's staying there. Right. So we're now giving a permanent override.
I see the track.
You see what I'm saying? We're giving a permanent override for under budgeted amounts of money. And we don't have anything in front of us that says this is going to happen. I can't find anything anywhere that says any of this is cut. So that's kind of what I'm a little concerned about, is pushing a permanent override on like I say, I have no problem with their budget, what their requests are to run their departments. That's not an issue. My issue was the revenue side of it, undercutting your revenue and then pushing it on to the taxpayers on a permanent override.
Fair.
And I don't think they're not pushing it as a permanent override. That's the town end of it. We're short, so every $100,000 counts here, so.
Mr. Johnson.
So let's play this scenario out. They're undercutting they're saying federal aid is going to be less than the estimate.
Mm-hmm.
And we asked for a permanent override, received the town's permission to do the permanent override. Would we have an opportunity at the next time we set the tax rates to it's not claw it back, but not increase that amount next time?
That's a good question.
We all know that 2.5%.
I mean, it's going to be
costs are going to go up by more than 2.5%. So will that amount be within that amount already? Most likely. So it's probably a moot point, but we would have the ability to adjust the next tax rate to account for that, or the next assessment. That would be the negotiation to remove it. Is that fair?
I'm not sure I understand.
They don't have the dollar amount, so we don't have the dollar amount. But in the next time we negotiate, or in the fall, if that information has gone through and we have that information, then the next set of negotiations begin for something different the following time.
So, this is my understanding, and if I'm wrong, maybe the treasurer or the accountant can help. A few years back, Dudley Child and the school committee took a vote not to use their reserves to help with budget shortfalls. So the assessments were always a moving target, then they give us a price. So I thought they said they were gonna use E&D to cover a shortfall, this time up to a certain amount. Because what happens in Mike's scenario, if the money's come in the end, they don't have to use their E&D or whatever they're using for revenue or reserves. They don't return it to the town unless the E&D exceeds a certain percentage, right, of their total budget or something. It's I forget the number. So, because we get the email, we just got an email not too long ago for our other accounts. So their excess of money has to exceed a certain percent. And I brought it up with Mr. Lamash a couple of years ago, because Baypath has actually given money back to the towns through a similar process. I know it's a different school, but similar. So, whereas the town, if we have extra money, goes in the general fund at the end of the year. Like if we have $10 left over, we can't reallocate. It goes back to general, then it comes out. Their money goes to their E&D, and unless it exceeds that percent, it doesn't come out. So to pass an override with numbers that Mr. Reuter and Sarah's presented, we can't, my understanding, claw back monies without going to what they call an underride. You go back and do a ballot and you reset to a different tax rate. And nobody knows the cost next year. Hopefully we're not gonna get a 20% increase in insurance after a 10% at the beginning of the fiscal year and a 25% increase on fuel. But I understand Mike's scenario, but just like our budget, if their shortfall of 500, doesn't mean they do layoffs. They might cut technology, which they've done in the past. They've come before us and said, oh, we gotta cut technology. They may cut similar to what we do, and then at the end of the year, I mean, Mr. Sashevsky's in the budget process at his school system. At the end of the year, they may reallocate that monies within their budget, as opposed to going back to the taxpayers and saying, here you go. Because again, that E&D is the percentage at the end of the day. I'm repeating myself, but Baypath has given back more than once since I've been on the board, and I don't think Dudley Charlton has, and that's not an indictment of them. It's just the way the numbers line up at the end of the year, and I don't think we can do the assessment for 27 and say, well, you got that 5 that we talked about back in March of 26 at the Heritage School. Where's that 5 on the assessment? Does Charlton get 55% of it because of his students? I don't think the end result, when you make the sausage, you don't care how you make it, it tastes good. I don't think the making of that sausage comes out the way we want it at the end, the way we hope it would, the way Mike's scenario wants it. I don't think that's the way it works. And again, between the treasurer and you're involved in the budget for education.
Mr. Sullivan, I'll put it in where I'm looking at in a different scenario to compare. Let's say another department head, let's say the fire chief came and said, I get X amount every year for ambulance receipts, but I heard that there's gonna be some cuts to Medicaid and I'm not gonna get reimbursed for all these ambulance rides. So I'm gonna cut my revenue in half from the ambulance receipts. You would have a question. You would say, well, where did you get that information from? Because you're counting on that money to come in. So you'd want to have some definitive proof as to, was this Herta sitting at a bar stool, or is this some legitimate information that says your Medicaid receipts are cut? You want to know what it is. You want to know and we haven't gotten that yet. So we get cuts, but we don't have any evidence that cut's going to exist, which now forces us to put it on a permanent override.
So going back to your original question, do you need that information to either make a recommendation if there's going to be an override, or make a recommendation for which one of these options you'd go for?
I mean, there's
Probably
five
on
of
the
us.
dollar amount.
Yeah, there's five of us here, and we're at the nth hour.
I mean, ultimately speaking, if we're looking at like, would we rather have to make cuts, and because it actually does go through, or maybe we over budget and then maybe account for that in next year's budget for what?
Can't do that.
So.
I mean, the only thing that can happen is they get the full federal funding, and they use it for whatever else. Like the E&D, they'll use the E&D for something else. And then they come back the following year and give us a budget with 100% federal. Because you know you're gonna get an increase anyway.
So to go back to the example, so if we lower the number because we think we were overcharged, and it turns out we were charged the right amount, not only are we under the override, we'll be making more cuts than we thought. So the risk is either we under budget, thinking we're going to not be undercut, and then if we do, we have we have more of a problem than we would have if we over budgeted and have a chance to then lower a future budget. So you're either putting all the risk is in cuts in town.
No, I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about, you're asking for about, if you go option 2, $1.848 million. I was hoping you'd ask for 1.648, because they're undercutting their revenue, which is shifted to us. That's why you have the 1.8.
But if it's true, Mike.
If it's
true, what happens?
If it's
And we
true,
use 1.6.
it's true, you do like any other department. You come back on a supplemental budget and you say, I'm short $200,000. I need that to.
And where's that gonna come from?
Yeah, how do you do that?
Right.
No. How
So,
do you do
so
that?
what I'm saying is.
An override in the fall?
If the number is, if they are cutting that money and it doesn't get cut, if the federal aid doesn't get cut, you're asking for an override for that cut permanently. That's what you're asking.
But they may reallocate that money somewhere else in their budget.
Of course they can. They're gonna allocate it to
Which is
anywhere
what-
they want. I'm just saying, you're asking for a permanent override.
Which I think was similar to what we went through a couple of years ago. Correct me, I don't know if Sarah wasn't here, but again, the treasurer's here, administrator. We were trying to get revenue figures a couple of years ago, and excise tax came in $300,000 more than we thought it was gonna, roughly. I believe, that's a ballpark number. So at the end, we did the menu override. We got 3 out of 5 pass. People said, oh, you had all this extra money at the end. He was accused of hiding numbers from the people and the figures. It was a number that we had budgeted where you build in a little bit of an increase. It was during COVID. And, the impetus was people held on to their vehicles during COVID. They weren't working. They repaired instead of buying new. Then cars were backed up. New cars came on the rolls. There was all kinds of legitimate reasons. We had a town auditor in here who spelled them out. And then that money was gone the next year. That was extra revenue that we didn't have. It probably helped us make a 2-year stretch of of the last override, which was gonna be a 1 year, but we were able to have that extra funds, and we reallocated that within our budget, and we put some aside for the next year. So I think the question about, did they cut 200? Are they gonna cut 200, 4 or 5? Are we gonna get money back? I think all we can go is with the best numbers they give us. You said you talked to Mr. DeSantis?
Yes.
You had asked the question of Mr. Lamache, and you hadn't got the follow-up yet. I think, in the absence of anything else, I think they're giving us the best numbers that they have. And I think it's muddying the waters of what the total that we need on what we have estimated is gonna be our costs and obligations going forward for the next year or two. If that makes sense.
Mr. Siganovich.
I think we're trying to boil the ocean here. I've got it. Pick a number and go with it, and you can change it at town meeting. You like that it's 200,000 less? Make a motion for 200,000 less, assuming it's going to happen.
Do that on the
No, this is
floor.
a ballot.
It's a
This is
ballot
a
question.
ballot question.
Ballot question we're talking about. So
Never mind.
just for numbers' sake, federal grants for the 2026, if you go to DESI, it's $1,565,000. I think you looked that up too, right? That's your federal grants. They are reducing that by 25%. So just do the math. They're reducing it by $391,000, of which Dudley is 46% of that. Something like that. 46. So that right now is $180,000 of less money that they're saying that they're going to bring in to offset their assessment. That's what they're saying.
I think the biggest problem is,
Right. And we are going to pass that along, that 179, that we have to come up with that in their assessment. We're short money. We need an override. That 179 or 180 or whatever number it is that they're shorting it, which is close to that, is going to be in a permanent override. That's what's in this 1.8 million. So that's all I'm trying to say. I want everybody to understand that was my point at the last meeting, so.
Well, we think because nobody is, what's that? People have communicated with the school, but nobody has communicated, except for the point where Joe told you that they don't expect. Right. So we don't, Mike's scenario is great, but we don't know. That's what they presented in March. We don't know. Have they adjusted that figure? Have they went up on it? Have they gone down on it? But we're working off the best numbers we have, and the net result is 1.8 roughly. Well, the full amount, 1.9, within 100 grand, puts what our finance team that looks at the numbers puts us on the track of surviving this year, restoring our stabilization, to give us a cushion for next year, and maybe we do like last time. The override that passes is presented as a one-year option with hope in the future, or, hope's not a strategy. Looking at the future of restoring, to give us a cushion that this one-year override becomes a 2, or takes us halfway into the next fiscal year. You know what I'm saying? The money's, I think we're quibbling over numbers, and we're trying, as a town, we're trying to present the best numbers that we have with these questions. And again, we as a town can say, I'd rather see 1.5 instead of 1.8, or I'd see 1.6. That's a number that was talked about. It was only a number. Like, what was the basis for that number? Like Mr. Johnson said before, find us those extra cuts. We could have, I wasn't at that last meeting, I apologize for missing it. We could have said, no, let's get it to 1.75 instead of 1.5.
Mr. Clark?
I think we've belabored this topic. I hate to borrow work terms, but maybe we take this offline and just deal with it, go with what we got here. And if we get a last minute answer, maybe we can do an amendment on the floor, or we do a last second update to the, I don't know when the absolute cutoff is, but.
That's my question. What are the deadlines?
tonight.
Tonight's the deadline.
Okay.
So I'd argue that either the FAA has to make a recommendation with a number or not.
That's what I'm wondering. Like I said, we made I'm willing to pull my motion back if we guys want to make a recommendation on the balanced budget. Without that, I'm happy to do that. You need a recommendation on the override amounts going on a ballot.
The only thing, through the chair, the only issue is, I think that unless we have a commitment that assessment would change, we could find out that it was spent on, 18,000 cases of tuna fish. It doesn't, unless they change that assessment number, it's gonna come out of our budget. I agree with you, but we gotta get them to, if they're not gonna change the number, then really,
And again, we have to remember, sorry, Madam Chair, their budget process is different than ours. Like, we're in a district, and it almost came to fruition last time, not too long ago. The vote can be pushed to where it becomes a district-wide vote. And what that means is we go to Shepherd Hill, like I think has happened once in the history of the district, where the Charlton voters come in and they say to Dudley, you made a mistake, or you guys budgeted too low, you have to come up with that, pick a number, Mike's 200 or his 188 or the 400. They can come and vote on our budget and tell us, tough, fund the schools and find that difference somewhere else. I think we're dealing in hypotheticals with what did they cut or what does federal aid get cut, whereas we're dealing with real numbers. And again, I sat in with you folks that day for a little bit. I wasn't happy with everything we have to do to get to what we've tried to get to. We got real numbers that I trust you folks with the treasurer, the financial team has come up with. Because the end result is, if we underfund something on an education component, they can come and push a district-wide vote. And it's not a threat. Like they told us one time, it's not a threat. They were here, school committee, they spoke, and I said, yeah, it is a threat, because you're telling us right now you're here. We don't fund you at the level you're expecting. We had people from Charlton emailing us saying, we're gonna come to your budget and take what our children deserve. I'd rather be in a position where we got the numbers you folks are giving us, we restore stabilization, restore capital, it gives us that cushion next year, as opposed to underfunding or underestimating, and we're in a really big, the town side budget is in a bigger problem next year than it is at this moment, which is bad enough.
And I think, Madam
Pick a
Chair,
number. Pick one of the two numbers, pick it and go for it.
I had more questions on the departmental cuts. So you've got police, fire, highway, admin, and other departments. What are you cutting from the police and fire in option 2?
We cut 5.
Did
in
we
option
cut
2,
or
yeah,
something?
there was some minor cuts to overtime. But again, that's really the only place, one of the few places you can go, but you can never predict, because you could have an officer or two injured and it becomes all overtime, so. There were very minor cuts. Expenses,
The 204? Is that what you're talking
Yeah,
about?
the 204, what's being cut from that 204? Is it a position that hasn't been hired yet? Or is it somebody who's already, some other expenses,
What
maybe
was the
not replacing
detective
a car? I don't know.
I think the detective position.
the detective position was in the initial request, and that was cut from 63 to 43, with the cut or eliminated to balance, depends on what level
Yeah, the
is voted.
detective position wasn't anywhere near.
No, it was 60,
No, it was
63.
60, yeah.
That was almost a third of the.
Yeah.
I thought overtime would have almost caught up to that. Like, I thought it wasn't even 63, like, because the other policemen would have to do the detective's job.
Right.
That it really wasn't $63, maybe 20. It's like all the overtime to make up for it.
And what's being cut from fire department for 192,000? If my house is on fire, I want the fire put out.
We cut the EMS expenditures.
Are we talking about the May budget now, or are we talking about the override?
It's 1.8 million, yeah.
That's it.
That was
The override part.
192.
Okay.
Was that the half?
On this page that has the on it.
Yeah, I think it was 144,000, was half the firefighters, right?
Right.
For the year? So that's the 190 something, 144 was,
Not cutting a person now, just cutting the second, we didn't fund it for
The
the full year.
second half of the year,
Yeah,
it's
correct.
already under a grant.
right.
So, John, option 1, that's a tough stretch for me, to make a recommendation on option 1. Just simply because we're adding a 2028 request to a 2027 budget. So, I prefer, that's the last option I would go with. Option 3 doesn't, I don't like option 3 either, because if you're gonna cut your grants there, we bring in more on those grants than we do. I mean, you're talking numbers-wise, the difference in the two between B and C, or option 2 and 3, is as far as a tax base, is only about $33, according to my numbers, per household. So I don't think the return on investment of keeping that is definitely more. I just can't see cutting that. So for me, my personal opinion is the only option here is option B.
Option 2?
Option 2, B, whatever you want to call it. I just don't see any other, I just see the two other options as, one, like I say, one is, option 1 is hard for me to recommend a 2028 budget request and a 2027 budget. I think that doesn't fly very well. And the other one is just not too much of a cut in that line item, which is, we get a lot more money by having that than not having it. So that's got to stay. So really, you only have option B, in my opinion, or option 2.
Mr. Clark.
It's my opinion.
Procedural question.
Sure.
You can only predict, you can only do one option, right? You can't just say if A fails,
Yeah.
try B.
Right.
You don't have to put up for vote. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, if we were to put option 2 out there on the ballot and it were to fail, God forbid, I mean, we may be able to rely on option 3 as like a pathway forward, but we can't put them both, unfortunately. We can't like put all 3 and hope, you know.
In the chair, that's what happened last time we did overrides. Did
We
vote
did the
on-
menu and we had 3 out of 2.
3 out of 5.
3 out of 5
Third
passed.
attempt.
And the highway got defeated in the town hall, and now the highway lost their foreman, an operator, they're down to 5 guys plus MJ. You know, the difference between option 1, Madam Chair, and option 2 is $33 on an average tax bill. And I get
I mean,
it.
2 and 3, right?
Well, 5,011 is average tax bill with override. On option 1, it's 4,978. I'm assuming you got that information from the assessor's office. We didn't just make that up.
No,
It's mathematical
right, there's numbers behind
calculation. Yeah.
And as Mr. Ruda stated, option 2, which is $33 per average, more palatable, represented what he does in his normal budgetary request process, a first pass. They go through and they trim some things where they think they can trim. And if we go to option 3, as Mr. Ruda said a couple hours ago, it feels like now, there's a $1 million number and an $846,000 number. I think going to the menu, to say the lower number passes because it's a lot more palatable, who's gonna come back and tell us, all right, now find that $1 million cut? I mean, I sat with you, we were going over, we found stuff for like $10,000, trying to cut something just to get even close.
What it would translate into is we would not put any stable back.
Right.
So we
No
would
capital.
pass 848, you'd put 800,000 in stable, and you'd be looking for 200 grand more in cuts. And you'd be absolutely no question back here.
Option 3 is too structurally unsound. You can't pass option 3.
Agreed.
Put that on the ballot. It's just, you might as well not put it on the ballot, because either one of those doesn't pass.
And we got killed last time. Because we listened to all for one for all, first override vote, got beat. Then we went back to the second one. The menu option was the third one, right? And people said, you guys keep going till you finally get what you want. But we listened to the people. Originally, everybody said, everybody's on the same boat. We're gonna jump in with the schools. The schools had a 5-year plan, which made a ton of sense if you really read it. Too much money, okay? Then we split. That failed. Then we said, all right, we'll go to the menu. And as John said, 3 out of 5 passed. The other 2, the town hall and the highway department, failed. And then people, they did an amazing job this winter, but guess what? They got the roads clean, but I'm sure MJ can tell you how much it actually costs to put less guys into a bigger snow event. Yeah, we had privates, I get it. Just think about it, folks. 5 guys and a superintendent, no phone. He took a week off. I probably shouldn't say this, stop me. MJ took probably his second vacation since he's been the superintendent, and we had no foreman to go out and sign for a permit on a guy's driveway so he can get an occupancy permit to sell the house because we had nobody else. We had no foreman. To just a simple, basic function for the highway department, to go out and sign off so a guy could sell the house and put somebody in their house. Sorry, MJ took his second week off in 30 months. I mean, I don't know.
So with that, I think the next thing we need to see is an FAA vote.
All right, so we got basically two of them we have to bring up here. So as far as the balanced budget, right, we should bring that back up because I had a caveat in there and I'm going to withdraw that. So does anybody want to make a motion on the balanced budget as far as a recommendation? Do you know what the numbers were, John, on that, the total?
This
Are you talking about the May budget or
The balanced budget?
option two?
That you presented to us that we made a recommendation on last time.
They're going back.
Not with the override stuff.
Not the overrides?
No.
This one, the one in
The
the
absolute
warrant.
balanced budget.
Yeah, okay.
What was
I think
the
we already
total number?
voted on that, but
Yeah, but like I said, I took,
You wanna
I made
change-
the motion with
with the caveat.
getting information back from the
Alright.
school, so I'm withdrawing that at this
Well,
point.
wait. My pages are all messed up here.
Or, see if I can pull it
If
up.
you
All right.
withdraw the caveat, does it, you don't have to vote on a new number, so the original vote stands.
I guess we can.
I mean,
do it
if
that
Sarah
way.
has Article
Sure,
3 there,
what-
they can just.
Robert,
Yeah, I don't think I
Rob-
have all of Article 3 here,
I
though.
want to just write it in, we'll call it, and then move on to the next thing.
Okay, so at a previous meeting, the FAA motion was to move that the town appropriates the total sum of $31,027,502.00 to fund the town's budget for fiscal year beginning July 1st, 2026, including its assessment for Dudley Charlton Regional School District for the purposes and amounts listed and with the funding sources as printed in Article 3 of the warrant.
So moved.
Yeah, so.
All right,
Second.
all right, any discussion on that? All right, seeing none, take a vote. All in favor? Aye. All right, so we have a recommendation on the balanced budget.
Perfect. So,
All right, so.
how about support for an override question
All right,
being
so-
sent to the ballot?
So we have three options. You know my opinion on which one I like. Does anybody have any?
I personally am for fully funding department requests, option one, if only because of the fact that it, in uncertain times, trying to, go ahead instead of like coming back every single time, town meeting we come back asking for more, it's gonna get to a point where the voters aren't gonna want to, be having that conversation. So kind of preempting saying there's one override and we'll give a little bit of headway before we have to do the next one. It's like you end up in a positive feedback loop where you have a little bit of breathing room and everyone can breathe, or you end up in a negative feedback loop where it just causes more and more problems down the line. So personally, I'm for recommending voting for option one, if only to stop kind of situations that would accrue from emergencies come up, the school doesn't get the extra funding, all these other things that would come up. It just makes sense to try to preempt that instead of waiting for an emergency to happen.
Anybody have any other?
Costs are gonna go.
Right.
I mean, we could have more costs, and we'd be almost in the same boat next year, so. We at least don't wanna go back next year.
Yeah, we've all sat through these meetings. They've been as conservative as physically possible with how much they're asking for. And it's at the point where there's, Dudley asks for less taxes than other towns. Our congressman is coming in saying that, it's not looking great for state funding. There's no reason that we should be looking like there's a more likely positive outcome that we can rely on than just planning for the worst.
I think I agree with Josh. It's only 8 cents more on the tax rate between option 2 and 1.
It's an extra $40 a year.
For the average. So some of us will be more than double the average. but I support option one as well.
Okay. So I'll just reiterate my point. You have a fiscal request for 2028 being put into 2027 budget. I know it's not a lot of difference, but this should be part of our 2028 preparation budget. Not, so if that gets rolled in, I don't have a, you know, you want to make a recommendation, but I'm just saying that
Is there
it's
a
rolling in.
More for everybody.
On this page, when they had option one described, it says, it eliminates the FY '28 request to fully fund those firefighters. So which is, it eliminates it or it includes it?
2,148,000 leaves them in, 1.9 takes them out, correct?
You know what? I think the language is a little, there's some discrepancies in here. So, because if you look, the increase, unless I have the wrong word, I've been out for a few days. So, if you read the narrative for option one, correct, and look at the amount, 1985?
Yes.
Okay, and that reflects taking out the firefighters.
Yeah, that's not the
That's
2.1.
what I thought. So
Yeah.
that does not include funding them for the extra 6 months, which will be in the next fiscal
I
year.
believe that's where we left it. Right? But did this change? No?
I don't think it's good.
So what it does is just takes a small liability and funds it into the next grant, for the next year.
Yeah, it's a
And
future commitment, yeah.
honestly, I know the chief had to leave. Maybe it makes someone's decision to stay. Someone said before, like interns or a proving ground. If I'm the guy who just came on a grant, and then they say, well, Dudley only funded you for 6 months, I might say, you know what, I'm not taking a chance. I'm taking all this training and experience I got. They're hiring in whatever, pick a town. I know, I'm not, I know, I'm just saying, it's just hypothetical, but if it's funded, you know your position is protected into the next fiscal calendar year. Okay, we can, like you said, we can breathe a little, we're not, I forget how you phrased it, the negative loop, you know what I'm saying? My opinion.
Mr. Johnson.
Through the chair, can the town accountant and town administrator just choose, and say it out loud, does option one include 6 months of 28 firefighters?
I do not think, I think, it's misleading because on this page, it says one.
2 point something funded into 28, 1.9 funded the entire fiscal year, 27. Instead of cutting our way to it, we funded it, the entire fiscal year, 27. We funded the entire year fiscal 7 with 1.9. Instead of cutting our way to it, we fully funded the departmental request, and they're fully funded in 27. In 28, that's the 2 point. That's the 144 additional. Is
Right.
So option one does not include fiscal 28.
Option one on the third or fourth page, yeah, like option one on the first page.
Yeah,
of the blue
I think the
page.
problem is that option one narrative doesn't line up with option one chart on the front, so people are getting confused with that.
All right.
2.1 funds 28.
So option one is 1.9 or 2.1?
2.1 increase.
No, 198.
Option one is 2.1 to fund for the entire fiscal year of 28 the firefighters. Correct.
Option one includes 28.
Yes,
Thank you.
Option one here.
Yes.
yes.
Does that make the motion
Yes.
any easier?
I didn't make a motion.
I'm sorry, the question about whether to make the motion.
And I'll just also mention this. A few years ago when we did this, the school gave us a future year request. So it wasn't just that fiscal year. It was a, I don't know, to fund future years, so we wouldn't have to come back for an override. So when they funded future years, I think that amount that went up, people were upset about that, and that came back pretty bad.
What was the amount? Do you remember? Because what I remember is that it was
It's certainly not
It was a
anywhere comparable
ridiculous
to
amount.
this,
Yeah,
but
this is.
I'm just saying, when you
this
fund,
seems
when
to
you,
be more
when you, if
reasonable.
you're gonna send out an override to fund future, even if it's 1 year, there's gonna be people that say, yeah, you're requesting stuff that you, beyond this budget. So that's kind of all I'm saying.
Like, excuse me, Madam Chair, like Mr. Clark said, a little bit of education goes a long way, and we've hammered it tonight. Yes, we're funding into the next fiscal budget, but we're funding for a purpose of keeping staff, because the grant lined up at the mid-year, not the calendar, not the fiscal year. So we have to go into that next one just to give them the funding for a full year. It's half a fiscal year, but it's a full count, basically a full calendar year of the grant being awarded, if I'm reading it properly, remembering properly.
Mr. Johnson?
The FAA can, through the chair, the FAA can make a recommendation that doesn't include that if they choose.
Correct.
John,
That's always true.
John, you made a recommendation for option 2.
Well, I'm going back and forth with what makes sense from the business standpoint versus a political standpoint. We haven't had much success about funding future fiscal years. We had directives to say, tell us exactly what you need for 1 year and not a penny more, and then come back to us if you want more. I wake up at night screaming hearing those words. What makes sense versus what politically works.
Right. Does it make sense to fund it all in one shot? And yeah, absolutely.
Of course it does.
Will it pass? Funding future years requests? I don't know. That's kind of.
If you give 1 inch of, see, they don't need it next year, why don't we just wait and see if they really need it next year? The minute you do that, now you've started rolling a snowball down the hill, and it failed. Because you've given a reason not to vote for it. I think we have to stick to the solid reasons to vote for this budget. I mean, for the sake of $100,000, do we have it fail? $150,000? I don't know.
Mr.
One
Clark?
last question. If we don't choose to do the 28 now,
Yeah.
do we stand to lose something that we can never get back? So last year,
I agree.
0%, we lost out because we didn't vote for the 0%. We had the chance at that, whatever that loan was, and we missed out because it didn't pass.
We only miss out if it fails, right? I
We
mean, if it
stand a chance
passes.
to lose something like, a firefighter because we don't pass it now.
I don't think that the public safety will, if we pass an override for 1.8, 1.9, we're not gonna be hitting public safety next year. We should be fine the following fiscal year, unless the economy explodes. We're paying $9 a gallon, a gallon for fuel and stuff, but we're not gonna be in, and Kerry thinks that's gonna happen.
No,
You
no,
should
not
see all
that
his,
much, but-
should see all the canned goods he has.
No, I don't have canned goods. I have 0 canned goods in the home.
It's all MRAs.
Why are you doing that?
I'm just thinking what happened last time. If we spell it out, this 1.89 does the trick, 1.84 does the trick, then that's what we should go for. If we ask for a penny more, that's when everything goes off the rails. Everything you're saying makes sense. Everything. That's why it's destined to fail.
Exactly. I mean, as a second vote, maybe could we ask for the extra? Like, that way it's a small drop in the bucket comparatively. Like, I could see going for, option 2, and then a second vote for what's missing from 2.
Because it's such a small difference, Madam Chair, that you're not gonna cure 2 or 3 years of not needing overrides. You're still funding 1 year, essentially. And maybe eliminating having to find the money for the firefighters the following year.
Right. It restores a little bit of a cushion that might help us in the second year, obviously without a guarantee. Because you're restoring stabilization and capital.
Right.
Which would be the buffer we're gonna use next year that we're using right now if it doesn't
Through the chair, if the economy continues to deteriorate, it just lessens the amount of cuts next year. If the economy stays the same, we skid into about even. And if the economy improves, maybe we put something back and a little bit more into free cash and stabilization. So
2 or 3 years is better than one.
yeah, it's,
There's just not a silver
It's
bullet
not-
option here.
no. There's risks to all three.
There is. And I
So
think,
but we gotta pick one.
I think if you go with option B and you come back in 2028, we can easily fit that budget item in. I don't think that's a problem fitting into our 2028 budget. I'd like to keep it at least under 2 million. I mean, so if you go option A, you're asking for over 2 million. It's, you know, don't want to get political, but that's a big ask. It's a psychological ask. You know?
And option 3, 1 million exactly, sounds arbitrary.
Right.
Whether it's real, when a dollar just happens to add up to 1 million, it just sounds arbitrary.
But option 3 gives two different votes. Either one of them fail, and it's a catastrophic. We can't get rid of our stabilization. You can't do it. You can't go to 0. So that's not really an option. So I wouldn't even.
I'm on board with 2 if you guys are.
What's a 1.848 or 1.9?
Yeah, 1.985.
So does anybody want to? You want us to make a motion on this and
Yes.
give you a recommendation? So I'll let anybody who wants to make a motion.
Motion to recommend option 2 for, was it 190, tax rate of 11.14 or average increase 1.985 million, 187.
What was the exact number? John?
1848,
No,
120.
they're recommending 1,985,000, which
Great.
we'll just plug the number into the ballot question.
All right, does anybody want to second that?
Second.
Okay, is there any more discussion on this? Okay, all right, call for a vote. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? No opposed, okay.
Can I
For what
ask?
it's worth, you got a recommendation from us, but I don't know what's gonna work for you.
I want to make sure we're on the same page. Like, that's the big thing, right? Like, that's your function as the FAA is to make a recommendation. Yeah. Mr. Ruda?
So we'll go with the ballot question that lines up with the number shall the town be allowed to assess in the purpose of funding the operating expenses, including contractual obligations, or would you prefer the other option, which is the tighter version, and we can plug in the 1.9 to that, which is option 2 as it's written now.
Except for the number changes.
Yeah, the number would be different, but.
The number, we would change the number to the voted amount of 1,000,009, and we would, so which one do you like better?
So the chart number's correct and proposed warrant article just has to be amended.
Option 2 where it says tight version.
Right. But I'm saying this number is what we're looking for, not the one that's up here.
We would put the 1.9 in
Right,
place of
into
the
the actual
1.8.
motion.
Correct.
Correct. I'm good with that, but it's, I don't know.
We need an actual motion on that, right?
No, not for.
No.
So, do you like the wording of option 2, which includes mention
Contractual obligation.
highway, it's a little more specific. Highway, energy, that senior services, would you like one? Is there no recommendation on it?
So option 2 would outline specifically a broad range of departmental requests that were cut to balance the FY27 budget at the May town meeting. So you'd be taking that money and applying it back into the departmental budgets that were cut, which is pretty honest. on option one is more pinpoint focused on the cause of the issue, which were the costs that went up, health insurance, employee retirement, contractual obligations, et cetera. So which approaches do you prefer?
Right.
Restoring that, we're gonna use the money to restore that, what was cut? Or option one, we're gonna use the money to offset the big increases in the non-discretionary spending, such as employee health insurance and retirement pension liabilities, et cetera.
I mean, I would prefer to see option 2. Mr. Johnson.
I'd like to make a motion to propose the ballot question match option 2 type version. Shall the town of Dudley be allowed to assess an additional $1,985,187 in real estate and personal property taxes for the fiscal year beginning July 1st, 2026, for the purpose of funding operational expenses and contractual obligations of the town, including public safety, highway, education, municipal and regulatory compliance, out-of-district tuition and transportation, energy costs, general government services, debt, insurance, and retirement obligations, and senior services.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
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 Those opposed? Abstain?
Nope. No,
Oh, did you say aye? Sorry, I missed it. I'm like, oh no. Okay, unanimous. Sorry, okay. So, do we have to do a separate vote to send this to the town clerk? Or does that cover it?
Might as well just in case.
Yeah, just to be on the safe side.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
Make a motion, send the final vote, direct the town clerk to send the override question, just voted, to the June 2026 local election ballot with a motion to include the form of the question, total of the override amount, take any other action relative thereto.
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Great, unanimous. Last bit before we're off this section. So with that, we want to decide on at least 2 dates for public information sessions so that we can talk about what the ballot question means, what it's going to fund, pretty much everything that we talked about here today, but also like give people an opportunity to have a talk back. Do we have any opinions on that yet? Mr. Ruda, have you had a chance to take a look at any potential dates going forward? Is that what Ms. Antonsen is looking at?
Yes.
Okay.
So anything after May 18th, right?
I'm gone the 3rd to the 13th, so not that you need my presence for anything, but I'm not gonna be here.
I hope it's a really good trip. Whatever it is.
Let's start drinking again.
How about if we start with day of the week, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, not Friday?
So if we're looking to do 2 different dates, would we be able to do a weekday and, oh God, you're gonna kill me, like a Saturday morning, maybe? I know. But if we wanna be available to people that are working and might have things after work that they can't make it on a weekday, keeping in mind that not everybody has to show up, like, I'm the one that floated it, so I will definitely be there, but.
I have a celebration of life on May 30th, so I can't make that one. 23rd is Memorial Day weekend, so I'm fairly certain no one's gonna
That's
be
a
around.
bad weekend, yeah,
On the 6th,
in general.
Potentially away the 26th through 28th.
Of May?
Yeah.
Okay,
When's the
from
vote?
6th
June
to May
when?
Who has a meeting on the 3rd of June? Like what?
It's usually like planning board Wednesday
Is that
nights.
planning board?
I don't know if they meet that night, I just know that's.
Madam Chair, I don't know off the top of my head, but it's any combination of Planning Board, Conservation Commission, and/or Water Sewer
Water
Commission.
sewers, yeah, that's kind of what I was thinking. It doesn't look like there's anything booked on June 2nd, based on the town calendar. I don't know if that lines up with what you're looking at, a Tuesday night.
Republican Town Committee will be meeting that night. For real.
Okay.
Wait a minute.
While they're here.
June 2nd?
They're in the senior center.
Chance of them flying out Friday, we're flying out that week.
Anybody love June 2nd? I hate it.
That's fine with me. I'm going on the 4th to the 20th.
June 2nd, 6:30 till end?
Yes.
And we want one more, right, on the weekend?
Well, I mean, if it's not gonna work, it's not gonna work, but I think probably the only weekend day that we could do, yeah, we're looking at either May 30th or June 6th.
I think June 6th is the only possible day.
Yeah, that's what I think.
June 6th is Saturday? Yeah, yeah.
They're on vacation.
4th to the 20th. Different time zone, not calling.
Yeah, no, don't call in.
What do you think? 10 a.m. June 6th, somewhere?
What was that, a Saturday?
Yeah.
Coming here?
Could we do it like on May 21st?
May 21st.
The Thursday.
What's the date of camp?
I'll miss work, but he missing golf.
I'll bring it up later.
We make a decision.
We're still talking about a second date.
What was the first date?
June 2nd. Tuesday, June 2nd at 6:30.
Not going to be as fun as I thought it was going to be.
They'll be on the form by the time we get to the
5:21, 6:30?
There is, hold on, sorry, 5:21, there's a master planning committee meeting that night.
We'll bump them into that.
Great, sounds good to me. Love that.
I'll
So-
be at Bermuda, so it doesn't work.
Yes.
So 5:21 at 6:30 and 6:02 at 6:30.
Yeah.
But that, we don't have any weekends involved, but
Well, maybe we can do something slightly more informal at the library on a different time. I'll reach out to Nicole and see if,
there you go, informal.
informal.
Right.
You got questions, we've probably not got answers, but like, we'll try. So, okay,
How about, 22nd or the 29th?
all right.
Oh.
Cool, so we're good there. So next up, departmental communication. Chief. Let's see how rapid fire. If you guys wanted to line up, this would go so fast.
Just real quick, we had an intern that his last day was last week. His name is Adrian Lara. He's from Nichols College. He joined us about 3 months ago, helped us out with a lot of administrative tasks, our CGIS audit, trying to get our accreditation, and try to update our policies, procedures. So last week was his last day. He did a great job, and I'll recognize him online, but I just want to make sure that the town's aware that we do have an internship program, and he did a great job with it. That's about it.
Thank you. Treasure collector.
Good evening. I'll try to keep it shorter than the police chief. Love that the Girl Scouts were there. The Cub Scouts came to my office on February 4th. A little less formal, but I had a captive audience, plus we handed out stickers. It's a good thing. Real estate was due last week, so the collection process is a little draconian. So please, ring the bell, please get it in. Also, your excise bills, you're running out of time, and before you know it, you're going to have another water bill that comes up. Plus, we're going from the old health insurance, I say the old, it's still in effect, till June 30th. Then we're going into a new group as yet to be named for 7/1. We had our meeting last week for active employees. Your retirees are going to be on the 7th. I can't imagine they're still up watching any of this. Well, fingers crossed we can get April cash done early. We had March for the first go-around. Maybe the wind will blow favorably and we'll get everything done by the end of the week. For numbers, improving our position. Thank you.
Town accountant?
Not much. My time has been spent totally dedicated to this and working with Rich getting the cash. So.
Perfect. MJ? Nothing tonight. Okay. Board member comments. Mr. Siganovich.
Thank you, Madam Chair. It was a great time at the Little League Parade this weekend, but I'll save that for one of my fellow board members there that joined me. It's a good time. In talking to some residents over the past couple of weeks, I got to thinking, and I saw the restaurant that closed in Park and Shop Plaza, Whiskey Rocks. There's a sign out front, and there's a phone number and a name there for David, the owner of the plaza. And I thought, geez, that's a tremendous opportunity for someone just starting out. It's a restaurant with all of the equipment. You don't have to buy a business. You don't have to buy the stuff. So I called just to get some information, and yeah, it's still available. But our discussion evolved, and apparently he's interested in developing the side where the lawn is, well, not the lawn, the overgrowth, and there's 2 donation bins. He's had some interest from national retailers, like actual places, not another dollar store, but like an actual thing that people would go to. I don't want to mention the name just because it's what have you. But I just think that's a tremendous opportunity for someone that wants to start a restaurant and get going. Do we still have the Economic Development Committee?
No.
Does anyone know? So who would handle something like that? Is that us? Is that? But well, let me tell you what my thought is. My thought is we need to somehow amplify that a little bit, because that's a great location. I'm sure you talk to people, they'd love to have somewhere, another restaurant, another something. They've got a stage, potential live music, something but a for rent sign. And I guess if we don't have an Economic Development Commission, then consider this the start of hoping we can amplify that somehow and see what we can do. Maybe put it on a future agenda. I don't know, something. That's all. Thank you.
Mr. Sullivan.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So it's come up many times in the past, the corner of Pierpont and Dudley Oxford. Resident reached out to me, and I reached out to the police department. He spoke to the lieutenant. Is there any way the town could shave that banking back? Well, it's privately owned for starters. But I looked at the map, and there appears to be a little bit of room. I think it's part of the taking on that corner. If we can put it on the radar, maybe you can actually go out there and someone can go out and figure out how much we still own as part of the taking. Is it feasible for us to try to take some of that corner? And if the registered owner of the property, who I believe lives in Dudley in that area, was amiable, is there any chance we could look into it? It's kind of personal. My sister-in-law got hit there a few years back by someone who did not stop. They were hurt, they went to the hospital, there was no fatalities. There was a fatality there a few years back, some younger drivers. So I just want to kind of put that on the radar. I don't know if we can have MJ dedicate a little time. I mean, I don't expect a report tomorrow, next 2 days, next week. Just look at that corner, see if there's anything we can do with what we may or may not have taking of, or meeting with the homeowner, the property owner, maybe he would be amiable to just shave off, I don't even know what the number would be, 3, 4, 5 feet. Make that left a little more palatable. And I also wanted to bring up Harper's tonight, but in the meeting went way longer than we planned. I know I've been copying on an email string with you and I, the treasurer. I want to see that keep moving forward. You had done some work, preliminary work on the list of employees that are no longer employees. We got emails when I was chair last year, going back to 2018. I mean, we gotta keep pushing, or if Harper's isn't our answer, we gotta go in another direction. So I would like to have that come up as an agenda item. Rich responded very quickly to an email today, so between you and I and Rich and Town Administrator's Office, we can get that process keep it moving, we really get it going. So I'd like to have that brought up. I'll speak to you before the next meeting, but
Sure.
I appreciate the action that we got responses through email, so thank you.
Absolutely. Mr. Sarczewski.
Mr. Siganevich mentioned it, the Dudley Little League opened their season up with a great parade this past weekend. It was wonderful to march, not as a coach and not as a dad anymore, but as a member of the Board of Selectmen to support the town. Great example of tremendous volunteer work by Dan Colella and the rest of the board. Like to commend also the members of the town who participated in the Earth Day cleanup. Did a wonderful job, lots of yellow bags around. A sad number of yellow bags, but at least they were full. It was nice to see a lot of young people in the community contributing to that. And kudos to the fire department for their work during the recent fire on West Street, as well as a variety of mutual aid calls. Recently received some wonderful communications about the professionalism of our team.
Mr. Johnson.
I agree. It was a great event Saturday. It's spring when you have the Little League parade and it rains a little, and that's okay. The sun came out. Also, I'm looking in Troop 273 has their yard sale coming up, and I know there's drop-offs coming. It's like Thursday, May 7th, 6:45 at UTAG. Saturday, May 9th is the next two coming up.
Some good buys there. There's been some good finds there.
Everything must go.
You would know, you've been involved for
a long time.
So,
time.
Long time.
Long time. All right, so with that, do we have a motion to adjourn into executive session to conduct strategy sessions in preparations for negotiations with non-union personnel, or to conduct collective bargaining sessions or contract negotiations with non-union personnel, police chief, not to reconvene into open session?
So moved.
Second.
All right, roll call vote.
Stephen Sullivan, aye.
Gary Siganovich, aye.
Chris Darcheski, aye.
Jay Johnson, aye.
Jada DeShane, aye. Thank you, everybody.